Won't you be seated, please, ladies and gentlemen?
It's like they're scared to come up here, like they know something bad is about to happen.
Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to summarize for you the meeting that I have just had with the bipartisan leaders, which began at 8 o'clock and was completed 2 hours later. I began the meeting by making this statement, which I think needs to be made to the nation. America's public enemy number one in the United States is drug abuse.
You know, that's so frustrating. In 1971, the number one public enemy was poverty. In 1971, the number one public enemy was the fact that folks didn't have access to health care. Folks didn't have access to decent wages. Folks didn't have access to riding the same buses. How dare you say public enemy number one is drug abuse when poverty is staring you in the face?
In order to fight and defeat this enemy, it is necessary to wage a new all-out offensive. I have asked the Congress to provide the legislative authority and the funds to fuel this kind of an offensive. This will be a worldwide offensive dealing with the problems of sources of supply as well as Americans who may be stationed abroad wherever they are in the world. It will be government-wide, pulling together the 9 different fragmented areas within the government in which this problem is now being handled. And it will be nationwide in terms of a new educational program that we trust will result from the discussions that we have had.
Why are we fighting an addiction with a war? Like, in my opinion, he was a failed president in terms of being a war president. So he's trying to make up for the Vietnam War by creating a war. And it's just amazing to me the earnestness that he's approaching this, as if, this invisible enemy is ravaging the streets of America, and we're going to use guns, police, and prisons to attack this war.
That deal with the problems of rehabilitation, in which his primary responsibilities will be research and education, and
You see how he stumbled over his words? Because he knew he was lying in. And if you look back historically, the only research that was done was by the FBI to determine who they were going to attack next, from Billie Holiday to the Black Panthers, from James Brown to Stokely Carmichael. Research and education went into determining how much money they could spend on cops, how much money they could spend on prisons, and at some point it became how much can we make off of incarcerating folks, and what is the profit margin? That's where the research went into. The research and the education went into the profit margin that we're going to gain from incentivizing the incarceration of Black and brown people as a result of a drug addiction.
In order to defeat this enemy, which is causing such great concern, and correctly so, to so many American families, money will be provided to the extent that it is necessary and to the extent that it will be useful. And finally, in order for this program to be effective, it is necessary that it be conducted on a basis in which the American people all join in it. That's why the meeting was bipartisan. Bipartisan because we needed the support of the Congress, but bipartisan because we needed the leadership of members of the Congress in this field.
Now, the only thing that resulted from those discussions is a lot of Black folks being sent to prison, a lot of Black folks being sentenced to horrendous amounts of time. We saw decimation of communities. We saw in the 80s, we saw crack take over Los Angeles as a result of fighting drugs. Drugs were introduced. We saw a multitude of ways that that sentence alone created a pathway to billions of dollars being spent over the years in a so-called effort to fight drugs, where all we did was contribute to the deterioration of Black and brown communities across the country.
One final word with regard to presidential responsibility in this respect. I very much hesitate always to bring some new responsibility into the White House because there are so many here, and I believe in delegating those responsibilities to the departments. But I consider this problem so urgent. I also found that it was scattered so much throughout the government with so much conflict, without coordination, that it had to be brought into the White House, and consequently I brought Dr. Jaffe into the White House, directly reporting to me, so that we have not only the responsibility but the authority to see that we wage this offensive effectively and in a coordinated way. The briefing team will now be ready to answer any questions on the technical details of the program.
Don't nobody up there look like they're ready to ask. Nobody move towards that mic. Like everybody kind of stay on the back. Like I'm not going up there to talk after that. It's funny. I was born in 1970, and looking at this press conference 50 years later, watching my family being decimated by the war on drugs, communities were literally destroyed as a result of this press conference. And it's hard for me to watch how much it looks like he is earnestly delivering what we thought was a solution, and it turns out to have been the exact thing that has led to the decimation of Black and brown communities for the last 50 years.